right. Welcome to another episode of the Cyber Mettle. My name is Alyson Laderman, and today with me, I have Dr. Omar Sangurima, and we have a special guest, Aby Rao, who is a senior cybersecurity and AI security professional. So we'll give our standard warning, though we are lawyers and consultants. We are not your lawyers and consultants for purposes of this podcast. We are going to go into stuff in depth and in detail based on things that we have personally experienced in our practice, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you today. Today's topic is all about AI, but not in the traditional sense. What we're going to talk about is why AI needs maintenance and the hidden risks that leaders really can't ignore when implementing AI in their businesses. And Aby, before we jump right into that topic, as you can tell, I love jumping right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your experience so that the audience understands kind of the perspective of where you're coming from.
And thanks for the introduction, Alyson. Aby Rao, I've been in cybersecurity for almost 16 years now and 21 in IT, so I understand the space a little bit. My background is a mix of spending time in the industry and doing consulting, so I've got different perspective in terms of how we can roll out cybersecurity services. My experience is primarily in the identity access management space, and then I moved to cloud security and now learning a lot about AI security. I don't consider myself an expert or a subject matter professional, but the aspirations are there, and I'm really focusing on spending time in the industry, talking to other leaders, and really getting a sense of where we are going with this AI thing.
Aby, thank you so much for that intro. I think that gives the audience a pretty good perspective of the experience you bring to the table. And I think I also saw you were in filmmaking and the arts as well. Is that fair to say?
I consider myself a storyteller, so I do visual art as well as moving picture, if you will. Yeah.
I love it. I think that helps bring an even more robust view of artificial intelligence because you can see it from the artistic side as well as the cyber and the tech side as we start delving into this topic a bit further for businesses. So I think one of the things that Omar and I talk about all the time, everybody talks about AI is taking all the jobs and all this, that, and the other. And we really look at it as AI is not a human. AI is a tool. And our position's always kind of been that AI, because it's a tool, is going to break, right? If you don't sharpen it, if you don't maintain it, if you don't take care of it. Where do you think that organizations get it wrong when they assume that AI is just self-policing?
Yeah, itself? Just going back to the statement you made about AI could break if it's not managed and maintained, right? The way I think about it and using AI terminology, it tends to drift rather than break. So it drifts away from the original objective or the use case that you want to accomplish, and it ends up somewhere else if it's not given the attention that you're looking for. So I feel like it's part of the DNA when it comes to AI ML, because if you look at the life cycle, there is an element of data collection, training the model, and these three steps itself is a caring and feeding experience, if you think about it. It's never one time, right? So going back to your point, it's about making sure that your models are fresh, the inference that you get, the reasoning that's done are fresh as well. So I think if businesses are looking at it as one-time investment and then we walk away and then this machine's going to glow, that's not the case. There is that element of operations that comes into play. And that's why you have positions like ML ops, machine learning operators, whose job is to keep up with that potential drift and make sure we are still on track to meet our goals.
And I think that's a great point, right? Set it and forget it is not AI. And I think a lot of businesses come into the space thinking, oh, I have to use AI, but if I get this one thing, it's going to solve this problem and I can set it and walk away. And it sounds like from your experience and our experience as well, it's definitely not that, right? It is one of those things that we have to come in and you have to refine and you have to look for drift. What are, for businesses that are hearing this and kind of trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? Could you break down what a model drift might look like or what those indicators would be for somebody who's trying to maintain some form of AI for their business?
What I've heard from businesses is that the whole inception of how AI ML comes into play is a very clear goal that's defined through multiple use cases that leads to the goal. So the goal may be, promoting individuals within the organization. And within that, you may have use cases. Well, we want to promote people who are individual contributors to a similar role, but a level higher, individual contributors to managers, right? So there may be multiple use cases that feeds to the larger goal that you have in mind. And what's really important for businesses is to measure its success and progress over time. So it's an entire ecosystem where if you think about it, it's a factory, right? And a factory has many different roles. You have people who are engineers, you have operators, you have designers, you have managers who make sure that there's overall governance of what goes on. And this is no different, right? You got engineers, you got operators doing similar job, and then you have auditors who play an important role in cybersecurity professionals who come in as an independent consultant and make sure that the drift is not significant. The goals of offering fairness and transparent service, it's still maintained within the ecosystem, ensuring that the ethics of what you're designing is still intact. So having those touch points throughout the life cycle of an AI ML goal that's defined is really important, and that cannot be ignored. And that's why it's important for businesses to understand the different roles and responsibilities, and there has to be a layer of governance which is independent of who built that ecosystem, right? These are external consultants. These are individuals who are far removed from the development and design of the process, so that they can offer that specialized perspective and auditability of the system. So just making sure roles are very clear, just making sure that individuals are engaged, professionals are engaged on a regular basis, and not at the start and at the end. So there are all these rhythms that you have to bake into this whole process.
And I think that's an excellent point for businesses to understand, right? If there is someone out there saying, hey, I'm a consultant and I can just give you this product, that's not the end of it. It sounds like what they need is to have other professionals to come in and basically set, I'm going to mix terminology, but KPIs, right? They're key performance indicators, a similar concept to make sure that AI is performing. If you treat it like, a low level, or one of our teammates love to say, it's like having an intern working with you. It's good to have the help, but you have to really check the work and you need to see what it's doing and to make sure that the output is right, the quality and what it is supposed to be doing in that way. And so again, it goes back to that set it and forget it. You can't just set it and forget it. Somebody coming in as a consultant to say, oh, I can do this for you and leave it. But without that governance piece, without that continuous monitoring piece, without the transparency and everything else, you're setting your business up for security issues. I mean, Omar, has that been your experience as well?
I think you're taking it as just one and done. I think over any type of technology is going to be a bad day. What I've seen and what I wanted to ask Aby was how do we best incentivize the different mindset and the concept of life cycle management for these models and these tools? Because what you're saying, while there's a lot of wisdom, for anyone that's been in the business, you go, wait a second, that sounds suspiciously like software development lifecycle management or patch lifecycle management. And if we haven't been able to get those right, so to speak, where can we improve that approach for AI? Is it more on the auditor side? Is it more on the monetary incentivization side? What have you seen as the better carrot and stick approach in that sense?
So I'll be very transparent. I'm not seeing an organization or an entity that does this really well at this point. I feel like this is still an area of maturity that we have to gain, and I'll explain what that means. Because I'm a big proponent of responsible AI. And if you double click on what responsible AI is, it's not one person, one department, one leader taking that ownership of responsible AI, right? And that's where the biggest rub is. When you don't have one owner, one person accountable, then the finger pointing and the lack of connection between these moving parts becomes very evident. So there is that aspect of it where we say responsible AI. On paper, that sounds great, but who does AI ethics? Is it the legal department? Is it cybersecurity? Is it privacy? Well, the textbook says it's everyone. Yeah, no, I get that. Everyone feeds into it. But who owns ethics? If a company is identified as doing something unethical, of course, you can go through the chain, right? It starts with the CEO and then you move down the list. But at a much more micro level, who takes the ownership? I think that's the part that's not been clearly defined in the industry. And as much as it sounds like a really polished phrase, responsible AI, its practice is not as evident yet. So I would be very closely watching what that means and how that translates. In terms of incentivizing, I feel like metrics has to be tied to that. And just like Alyson said, there is KPI, KRI. Now I want to define this new phrase, right? KDI, K drift indicator, K deviation indicator, right? How far have we deflected from the original goal? And maybe you're incentivizing teams or individuals to keep that number much smaller, much lower, so that you give them the credit that they deserve. So, Omar, I think there are a lot of things still operating in the gray area. And what I would love to see next year when companies are moving from experimentation to actual execution at scale is who puts on that hat of being the owner, right? There are terms like fairness, transparency, privacy, security. I think some are pretty straightforward. We get it. But what does an AI ethicist look like, and where do they sit within the org? I've not seen a whole lot. I would love to hear from both of you if you've seen that designation in the industry and they know very clearly what they're doing.
I think a lot of that challenge and why you don't see it is because, at least here in the US, there aren't any laws or regulations requiring any sort of accountability necessarily. I mean, we've got a state by state kind of piecemeal thing, and everybody focuses on something a little bit different. And so there's no overarching mandate of these types of things need to be in place and these people need to be accountable. And so, as the case law evolves, right, if there's no legislative law, but then case law starts to evolve, I think that's where we're going to start seeing where forced accountability will be in place. And that's usually when businesses start to pay attention. And so where that role, I've not seen a whole lot of that role for the ethicist. And yet I think it is a big piece of this. I think a lot of what we're seeing is we do because we can, not because we should. And I think that's where might be a lot of organizations that quite frankly step in it before they realize that they've made a mess and now they've tracked it through the whole organization. And I think that accountability piece is really key. And so I think if there are organizations that are operationalizing the NIST AI risk management framework and putting those accountability pieces in place because they should, not because they have to yet, right? They're going to be ahead of that curve, I think. That's at least what I would suspect, right? They're going to be able to show if somebody comes and says, hey, you didn't do this right. If they can point and say, well, no, we did have these indicators. We were monitoring. We were looking at drift. This person was responsible for this activity. This person was responsible for this one, and actually have it mapped out, something consistent with that framework. I think they would be able to get kind of past that liability, whether or not there is a regulation requiring it. No, Omar, I know you had some thoughts on this as well.
I think the only struggle now, and this makes me sad because of recent developments with GDPR and the potential for an about face on how stringent that statute is going to be, all in an effort to not get left behind. I still think that the use cases where you might have the aperture for an AI ethicist to come in are still going to be where you have other types of ethical concerns that are at the forefront. Obviously, close to my heart is the medical field, healthcare, where any disjuncture between, say, a scientist and a bioethicist, you're going to have to end up in the middle somewhere where it's no patient harm, and we have regulations across the research areas. I think there's going to be a little bit more space to have that conversation when it comes to, wait a second, okay, we might not be first to market then, but so what? There's things we have to put in place to protect patients, to protect test subjects, to make sure we pass those regulations. And I think linking that with reputational damage for certain organizations might start driving the conversation forward. But to your point, Aby, other than that, in many commercial settings, I think the horse has left the barn, sadly.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree. But, in terms of actual execution in this space, I've seen very little. Even, NIST RMF is a great framework. It's a really good framework, but it resonates with cybersecurity and privacy professionals a lot more than others in the ecosystem, right? Folks in the legal department or developers. I feel like we need a larger framework that takes over, and NIST RMF would be part of it, but there are more elements that have to be addressed, and clear ownership has to be defined.
I think that's totally fair. And when we're looking at that different ownership, when we're looking at the governance, what could that kind of governance look like for an organization from week to week? What should be, so if an organization says, look, I'm going to bring in some AI for my company. Now, let me take this a step back, actually, because we jumped right into like the super tech part of this, right? Let me take it a step back. Let's talk about an organization that is thinking about introducing AI into their organization. And I think it's something, Aby, you referenced kind of in passing right at the beginning, where it was one of the first things I think they should do is determine what is your goal for using it? What are you trying to accomplish with that use of that technology? And start from there. What are the other considerations that a business who says, I've been told I have to use AI. What is it? What do I do? What is that full spectrum look like for them that they should be considering before they enter into the use of that kind of technology?
Yeah, no, that's a fair statement. I think where a lot of companies are getting really excited is the evolution and the extremely fast evolution of AI, right? I feel like a lot of leaders and businesses pick the tool or technology and then work backwards in terms of what business value that offers. And I feel like that's a very risky move to make as a business leader. Number one, you need to identify what your business goals are, right? Where do you want to move? What space do you want to operate in the next 3 to 5 years? And then you see its relatability with AI. And once you take that approach, you tend to be a lot more successful. A lot of my peers I've talked to, they work very closely with their business leaders. And the direction of information flow is from business to technology and not the other way around. And the ones who are taking that approach, I hope things go well for them because the technology is moving at lightning pace. And I don't know what things are going to look like end of this year, let alone next year. Right. So knowing your business, knowing the growth areas for your business ends up being really key. And then you can weave in your need for AI ML. And maybe there isn't an immediate need. That's okay as well. But just jumping on the bandwagon is not the most smartest thing to do, at least from where I sit.
I think that's sound advice. So when I do business coaching, right, whether it's a law firm or another organization that I work with, they'll come to me and say, I think I need X, Y, and Z. And then I'll go, okay, well, let's talk about what you actually need, right? What is it you're looking to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And I have found that most often the organizations I've worked with already had some technology they were not maximizing the use of that would do the accomplished goal. So they didn't have to spend more money. It was just, well, let me train your team how to use Word properly, right? We all talk about AI and machine learning like it's completely new because ChatGPT became so big so quickly and just in everybody's face, right? At that point a couple of years ago. But before that, right? I mean, if you set up rules in Outlook, you were doing if then machine learning, right? If this email comes in from this person, it's going to show up in my inbox in bold and in red because I told it to do so, right? I was able to train my system to do that. And so if an email came in from the court system, I would have it auto forward to my paralegals so they could start saving it in the document and go through a system of flows that we had already created. All of that was done 10, 15 years ago, right? That was all before we all had easy access to AI as we know it today. And so a lot of it, to your point, is if not every business has to adopt right away, if it's not something that meets their needs or doesn't seem to meet their goals, it's really keeping that in that mindset. I think I've always been happy to adapt, but don't have to be the first to adopt because I want to see what I need. Like you said, working from technology, buying the technology and, how do we make this fit as opposed to, wait, what do I need? Buy the right tool for the job you're trying to accomplish, I guess is the short version of that very long soapbox that I went on. But I think that was the point, is not everybody has to get there right now, even though that's what we hear, right? The marketing of you have to have AI, you have to have AI, you have to have AI. The other part, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this, is how do you help organizations realize and handle the use of shadow AI by employees who may be using it and not telling the organization, and what training they really should be doing to make sure that the business and their employees and their contractors are not inadvertently giving up business trade secrets and intellectual property rights and that type of stuff by using either company sponsored but not securely set up, or whatever's on their phone, AI that they have handy. What would you say to those businesses as to how to handle that particular situation?
From a cybersecurity professional perspective, that discovery aspect has to be baked into your cyber strategy. And I'll explain what that means. DLP, data loss protection, has been around for years now, right? Emails which have attachments with sensitive information go out and they get blocked by DLP solutions. And that mechanism has been around for decades. We have to learn from that. Right. And there are AI DLP solutions that are out there that do exactly what you said, which is block sensitive information, leave your organization, block intellectual property that leaves your organization. And any trade secrets that are making its way outside your organization can also be tapped into. Now, what gets a little tricky is that AI is semantic based. It's not indicator based, right? It's not as heuristical as, emails. You can do wildcard search. That's completely fine. But there is a semantic aspect of it where context mixed with sensitive information makes the package work. And that's why organizations have to start thinking about adapting AI DLP.
Face there, it'll be all right.
I was focusing on utilization of AI DLP within your organization. There are a lot of new vendors out there. But that discovery foundational aspect is really important, Alyson. I think organizations are still waking up to it because they're like, we got DLP, we're good, right? Well, not really, because the way information prompting works doesn't necessarily equate exactly like attaching sensitive information to emails. So that's a no-brainer. Having that level of discovery is really important for shadow AI. And that's how a lot of companies are getting around that challenge, is sitting back, discovering the traffic that's going back and forth between your organization and outside, and then ensuring that you have deeper insights into who's the offender. Is there enough education and awareness imparted? Do we need to change our usage policies? Do we need to block certain LLMs or AI tools that are out there? So it's a bit of a dance where, number one, you understand the usage within the organization through AI DLP tools or other tools, and then you work around your strategy to prevent such activities taking place. So that's how several organizations have gotten around shadow AI challenges rather, is to have that layer of monitoring in the background without really being that police out there stopping people from using AI.
What about, and thank you for that. I was going to say, and I always go back and think about small businesses that may not have access to DLP software, right? And those types of preventative activities. What kind of advice would you give to a small organization that may not have a cyber team in place, probably don't have policies? Where's a great place to start as to how they should be handling their technology, their cybersecurity and AI
security? There are two aspects to it. Let me start with not so expensive, option, which is awareness and training, ensuring that your small team is familiar with the risk that you bring in when you start using AI tools and attaching proprietary information. So generally, awareness and training is not that expensive. With AI, you can create some really good content as well. So it's really handy. The other one is around usage of secure browsers. That will kind of monitor the usage through your browser and make sure that there is blocking taking place through your browser. Again, this is slightly more expensive than using awareness and training option. But those are the two examples I've seen in the industry work. Once you scale up beyond that, there are many different layers of defense you can put in that would really reduce the risk in that space.
But I love your suggestion, because the secure browser is really that best fit for affordability, but impact. Because in a lot of cases, you can get out in front of data leakage through the AI modeling. Because if folks aren't, you might have some folks that are going to try to work around it, but if they are, then they were going to do bad things anyway. If they're going to work around getting around a browser lockdown, because that's, again, with the security awareness training, locking down browsers, you're going to offer, I think, you're going to capture like the 75%, 80% of small to medium business even uses of it, versus if it's embedded. If it's embedded, then it's, all bets are off, and you're just, like you said, Aby, you're putting the technology in front of the business case, and then that's a harder conversation to have. What I wanted to pick your brain on, if we could real quick, was you kind of teased it. So how do you think, what are we going to be grappling with this time in 26? Where do you see it going with your knowledge in the field? I'm always fascinated to sit and listen. Where do you think we're headed with this technology, or the problems we're going to be grappling with in 26
Yeah,
at this time?
this is my prediction, and knowing what I know as of November 2025, right? LLMs, usage of GenAI will be table stakes. I feel like that's something pretty much everyone within the organization are currently doing or will be, utilizing in the next year. Agentic AI is something to watch for. I think there are some really good use cases, but I don't believe it would be as popular as GenAI. And that's primarily because you're trying to build workflows that are of relative importance to your organization. And organizations don't have millions of workflows they want to build. They want to just tap into the important ones. So agentic AI will gain traction, but will have its ceiling, how far it can go. I think AGI, artificial general intelligence, is something that is very actively worked on. And there are organizations predicting by 2027, we'll have AGI in place, which will be a game changer, right?
wow.
Now, we are not talking about replacing or supporting one particular job profile. We are talking about a group of people. AGI is something that a lot of large organizations are betting on and really pushing the envelope on this. So I'm going to track how close we get to that in 2026. And if 2027 is still the landmark that we'll achieve AGI. And so that's something I'm going to monitor very closely.
That is a lot to think about right now.
That's heavy. And also,
I know, that just sits. I'm like,
I applaud you for you timestamped it with when you said it, and you said, I'm going to track it. And then I caught it. You're much nicer, more professional than I am, but I caught in between the lines of like, and come at me next year. All right. I'll track it and I'll tell y'all what time it is. I'd love to circle back right around next year, and we can do where have we gone? And also that. very the agentic, like you said, folks are getting hot and bothered about it, but it's not necessarily, I think, going to be the same. I think the UI UX hurdles there are not quite making it as ubiquitous as the LLMs, but that's still not to say that it's not going to have potentially a disruptive effect. Aby, this has been great. Truly. It's just been, being mindful of time, of course, but it's phenomenal. Is there anything you have brewing, any talks, anything you have cooking up on your side that you want to promote or let the viewership know about?
Yeah, I appreciate
Please
the
let us know.
opportunity, Omar and Alyson. One of the things that I've decided to do is share with the community what I'm learning and the experiences from my workplace and interactions with other professionals. So I've started the series called Practical AI Leadership Series, where what I'm doing is all the learnings, I'm going to package that into smaller nuggets and share with my LinkedIn community week over week, because one of the main reasons why I do this, there's no commercial aspect. It's free. As long as you're connected to me on LinkedIn, you get access to it. It really helps me learn better and think about subject matter much more deeply than not talking about it. And that's how I operate. This is my opportunity to really dive deep and think from different angles. And whatever comes out of it, I pour it into LinkedIn content. So that's what I'm planning to do. Hopefully, we can connect again and talk about such topics in the near future.
We would love that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Aby. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you
your
both.
time
And
today.
you both have a good rest of the evening. Take care.
You too.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.